Okay, so we'll go ahead and today get into the topic for today. So Cloud Pen Testing Bootcamp Day 2. Thanks and welcome back. Glad to see you all back again. Yesterday was a lot of fun. I really liked the questions and interaction. If you have things to share, please feel free to share. We don't know everything. I've been doing this for over 23 years and I'm still learning. And one of the things too that I encourage people getting started to share with everyone, because you're just getting started out. You're starting from scratch. You're coming through, and some of these resources didn't exist when I was starting out. So some of these things I might have missed. So please feel free to share. We had some good participation yesterday. We've got some very knowledgeable folks in this workshop today. This is not a beginner topic. It's not an easy topic. So, it would make sense that we have different levels of people in today. So we're going to cover enumeration and privilege escalation. So the agenda is enumerating Azure and Azure AD from different roles, identifying and using escalation paths. So kind of the topics we'll touch on is enumerating users as guest, enumerating as member. And so first we'll go ahead and we'll do a let's see, we'll look at and do this in overview of Active Directory account types. And it's really interesting how much they've simplified the account types with Active Directory and Azure compared to the traditional legacy Active Directory. Let me zoom in here so we can see the screen. And so here's just kind of an overview of some of these accounts in Active Directory. And so the following account types are available. Work account, this is really what we're kind of referring to as our member account. Guest account, can only be a Microsoft account or Azure Active Directory account. So this is like with your guest accounts, you're letting outside people work in your organization. So this could be like on a business to business type thing. It could be some company that's providing some services for you. They've got an account, a guest account in there. As we were mentioning yesterday, this kind of replaced some of the trust domains and stuff from the Microsoft Active Directory legacy world. And so here you just give people a guest account. It makes things a little more simplified. That's one of the things about Azure is they kind of simplified some of the account management within that. So the guest account's really good for business. We have a type here that we're not really going to go over, but a consumer account. So if you have like a customer that needs to access apps in your environment, then they can access through using the consumer account. What was the link posted? I didn't see. Let me go ahead and thank you for reminding me. I will, and if I don't put something up, then remind me and I will put that up and we'll share these links as we go along. So these are kind of good to go through there. Actually just going through the Microsoft Azure documentation is very helpful. And that's one of the things too, people say, how do you, you're doing these things, how do you learn these things? And so, as you're kind of keeping your notes, take stuff like this and bookmark it or put it in your Evernote or OneNote, whatever your note taking tool of choice is, and have access to this, because sometimes you don't remember all this stuff, but if you want to know about Azure Active Directory accounts, then you could easily refer to this. So having good references. And so this is the main thing we'll be concerned with is just a work account that we're referring to as like a member account. And that just means that you're a member of the tenant, and then a guest account. So anyone have any experience with doing any administration in Azure Active Directory? And so the main focus we're going to be looking at is guest and member. It's just really interesting to look at, recently be looking at this stuff more from the administrative side, I've been used to a lot of the pen tests I've done. I did one back in late December, early January, an Azure pen test, and I was running a tool. So we really didn't get access to any of the consoles or anything. We were just doing running stuff through a vulnerability scanner, as well as any kind of PowerShell stuff, but really didn't get on the console. So going in and looking at some of these administrative consoles is kind of interesting to see how they've kind of more simplified stuff. And, it's compared to the old school Active Directory ways of doing things. Because back mentioned yesterday, the Novell NetWare, they was kind of really complex for anyone that's dealt with it. And a lot of the things in the old Novell world for their directory services, you did a lot of stuff from the command line, which, kind of was kind of interesting. I remember, my first exposure to servers was NetWare. And I remember whenever I saw a GUI like on Windows, thinking of a server having a GUI or Windows, that doesn't make sense. But really, my perception was kind of clouded because I started out with NetWare, which a lot of stuff was, you had a separate server console, you ran stuff from the command line. It was just nothing like a regular server, because you go back and look at some of the first servers like Linux, Unix, pre-Linux days, your workstation and your server look alike. So in actuality, NT was more realistic or more in tune with what traditional servers were like. But some of the utilities and stuff you used to have to do to sync Active Directory and all that, Novell Directory Services was kind of interesting and kind of a learning curve. David said everything in Azure is associated with resource group, right? I believe so. So what kind of replacement for OUs and containers? So yeah, I guess resource groups have kind of replaced that. So yes, roles-based access control, but it's just kind of managed a little different. So thanks for sharing that link, Mike. So someone may want to check out what Mike's sharing there. At least NetWare had directory services, not so at the time. Yeah, Microsoft didn't. And a lot of people, that weren't in IT back then weren't aware of that. And even before NetWare, there was Banyan Binds. So NetWare wasn't even the first directory services. And just, having to type things in using the organizational units and all the paths to have to put all that stuff out was kind of a really hassle. And it's kind of odd because it kind of used the little Indian notation where things are kind of backwards. So that's the way you would type in, the context for in directory services. The main type of accounts that we've kind of focused on in this is a guest account and a member account. And so when, like Azure Active Directory business to business collaboration is a feature within external entities. So whenever you add a guest, you send an invitation. So if I'm inviting you to join outside the organization, then you'll receive an invitation, and then you click on the invitation to process it, and then you have access as guests to that domain. So there's another link here that I'm going to put up for you. And I took this from this Microsoft document here. Yeah, the little Indian notation, that stuff kind of was confusing to me when I was going through the OSCP and doing the buffer overflow, getting that stuff down, because, there's different formats you can use it in. Some exploits don't use little Indian, and then just making sure that your resources are lining up with what you're trying to do. So there's a link for where I got this information here, and we'll go ahead and pull that link up and take a little closer look at that documentation. So really one of the things they've done a really good job with. Before, it was more difficult to do business to business, because as I was mentioning yesterday, the company I worked for, we had some type, it was RSA Clear Trust was the tool at the time. I think they may have changed the name, but we needed a way for people to authenticate the applications without having to put them in our Active Directory. So we had a different Active Directory instance that was able to leverage our internal Active Directory and our external Active Directory instance, which we had in our DMZ. So there's the document here. It just kind of told what is guest access user in Azure Active Directory. So what we had in the slide here is the Azure Active Directory business-to-business collaboration is a feature within external identities that lets you invite guest users to collaborate with your organization. With B2B collaboration, you can securely share your company's application services. So this is one of the things too, if you've got someone that's using your application, you can even share this like with consumers, but you may have different companies that you're doing business with that are accessing your application. So you can give them access through the guest feature. And then you can set it up where they're only accessing applications. So you give them access to applications. So one of the things, it's a lot less granular, but it kind of, I think it based on, back when I was a sysadmin, if you would have had like someone that was doing identity and access management have to go into Active Directory, we'd set up roles for them and they would just add people to roles. And they had some different software that come along over the years that HR would be allowed to go through and fill in user information. It would process the user account. So getting down to the nuts and bolts, the actual Active Directory and doing this, yourself could be pretty complicated. I mean, anyone that's been through the MCSE or see what that entails to be able to understand the legacy Active Directory, that can be pretty complicated. So the developers can use Azure AD business to business APIs to customize invitation processes or write application. It's like self sign up portals. So there's some more information here. So it kind of shows how, we kind of mentioned the collaboration, makes collaboration more simplified, easily invite guest users from the Azure AD portal. It's really interesting because back, it's interesting all the stuff that's web interface now because, it's been since December 2003 since I did sysadmin work and starting to deal with that, seeing the more web interface stuff, just seems a little more user-friendly than what there used to be. So Michael said legacy Azure features are easily to hack as well. Yeah. There's some of the legacy features of Windows in general, dealing with some of the protocols like NTLM, that makes, you're on the network and they've got, you can run responder and capture NTLM traffic and capture password hashes and crack hashes or pass the hash. So there's a lot of things that make it, a little more vulnerable. I mean, when you got something that's so hard to get, so difficult to configure, there's so many more opportunities for misconfiguration. So we can show here, like you're sending a guest, you're inviting someone to join the account. And this can also use to be exploit someone. If you have, you could use this to kind of phish someone. You could set up a malicious instance of Active Directory and get someone to log in and make them think they're accessing some other environment. And so you can set the policies. So we can set this up to use conditional access, multi-factor authentication. And so you can have like users flagged for risk. So this is interesting, risky sign-ins and authentication methods. So let application and group owners manage their own guest accounts. So this kind of makes it nice. This is one of the things with the single sign-on solution we had is we allowed different branches and then even like companies that did mortgage business with us. They may be a third-party mortgage provider or they may do some kind of processing for the company. We were able to easily let them access stuff and control access to their branches. Because sometimes, we had hundreds of mortgage branches and then the administering users for all those branches. And a lot of times, depending how the market went, you'd see a lot of people come and go. So, someone having access to administer their groups, then that makes it kind of easier to get people added sooner. And so the member account, this is basically more or less this is a member account kind of in some of the content. It was referred to as an insider. So a member account, this is just like a regular account or member of the tenant. Think of it as insider, think of this as like an Active Directory, a member of Active Directory. So that's the same instance here. So you're an insider. And so, when you're doing enumeration to exploit systems, there's different enumerations that you can do, but one of the things too, and someone had mentioned, Mike mentioned yesterday, the assume breach model of pen test. Sometimes you do an assume breach. Maybe you don't have time on your pen test to go through and do the enumeration, or you're just really not wanting the traffic or any possibilities of anything side effects from enumeration. You can just go to an assume breach model and you got an account to see what you can do, because there are insider threats. Sometimes people within a company can be disgruntled. Nation states have actually had members join technology companies. I heard a story about some computer company. I'm trying to remember, some kind of computer hardware company, that someone from another country actually had a spy apply with their company. They got a job and they were stealing intellectual property. So that's one of the things there with the insider threats. So that's where the assume breach model is a good one to use, because if we got everything right, that, and this is hard to say that you're 100% you're not going to get breached, to say like you've got multi-factor authentication, you've got everything secure, and say you really have, you got all the things in place to try to prevent any kind of phishing email. Say you got Proofpoint running and you've really got things set up to where it's catching phishing emails. Say that you're best real world, kind of a fantasy. Everyone in your organization is very security aware. They're not clicking on the wrong things. See how that happens. Then what happens if you get disgruntled employees? What happens if someone gets a hold of credentials, like we were talking about, like GitHub yesterday? Someone gets a hold of some Active Directory credentials and gets in. You need to test that, because sometimes it's near impossible to get initial foothold. So an assumed breach is a good way to test the rest of it. It's almost, you can almost think about it as like you can compare it to like a white box pen test. And this is or authenticated pen test like you do in applications a lot of times. And that's a way to test your systems a little further and make sure they're secure. Because if you're just depending on the black box style or blind pen test where someone has to get that initial foothold to perform the test, then there's a lot of vulnerabilities going to get missed out on. So doing something like assumed breach is a good exercise to go through. And so one of the tools you can use for AD user enumeration is the Get Azure AD user. So you can collect Azure Active Directory information there. And so just going through and collecting that information, enumerating users, because then you can try, if you did password spraying. So what we're looking at now, you've already conducted like password spraying, got your initial foothold in the network. So you're almost like at the assumed breach. And so now we can run something like get AD user. And did I put that up there? Okay. So yeah, you can use something like get AD user to enumerate accounts. And pull this up. And so get AD user is a PowerShell tool. So this is really one of the things important for anyone that's getting into pen testing is to, Impacket tools. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Michael. Impacket's got a lot of different tools out there. A lot of the stuff for your PowerShell Empire tools. There's a lot of, and some of the PowerShell Mafia tools for enumerating information, looking for files. Yesterday we showed, using PowerShell to find files, which sometimes you could find passwords in it. So this get Azure AD user, so you can look up and get the users. So you can get 10 users. So this is like top 10 users. Example of get by user ID. So you can see the different syntax here for running that. So like I said, you really want to learn how to use. You don't necessarily have to know how to script in PowerShell, but it's probably one of the more complex scripting languages to use. Because if you got a Python script, it's usually pretty straightforward. But the administrative tools that you have with PowerShell, just what Microsoft offers alone is pretty powerful. And a lot of the tools that are out there leverage some of the Microsoft built-in functions and commandlets in PowerShell. So you can leverage those. But I mean, this is a pretty extensive tool set. So when you look in the pen testing world for like Python scripts or Go scripts, there's several different scripts written by several different people. And so with PowerShell, there's like an extensive tool set that's available to use. There's third-party stuff, like Michael mentioned, the impacted stuff to do enumeration. So you can search among retrieved users. So you can find out the user type. And so that, like, they're a member, so you can find out. And so this is they're showing a new user. So you're seeing the object IDs and get user by principal name. And so you can even look for titles and stuff too. So they're looking for someone in sales. So if you're in here doing you're looking for targets in the company and you want to find someone in accounting or one of the C levels, then you can search for titles to find that. And so here's some different parameters that you could use for that. So all parameters, and then you can filter those as well. Any recommended resource to learn PowerShell? One good recommendation, this is a good way to use it, is Under the Wire CTF. And this one is a good way to learn PowerShell as well as Windows security and pen testing. So this one you're using, so if you look at the description here, I'll just go ahead and throw this up so we can see it on the screen too. But this is a good one there. You got Over the Wire CTF that's more Linux based. And so Under the Wire is it's PowerShell training. And so it's like in scenarios that you'd be used for security. So it's, there's ways you can learn PowerShell just for basic administration, but here you're able to go through and you can see the different online challenges. So you go through these and you're working with, and so some things may help you in the games or the internet help. So yeah, so there's these different challenges and stuff that you go through. It's like a CTF and it'll teach you how to use PowerShell. And so also too, if you look at some of the documents on Microsoft's site, they've got some information. They've got several learning resources on Microsoft on their site. So if you kind of look through there, there's some good resources and documentation on that. But the good thing about, okay, thanks for sharing that, Mike. So we got Lily back. Welcome back, Lily. And good to see Don. I didn't see him on until earlier, but welcome back. I know you were probably on it earlier, but anyway, this is a good place to start with. I mean, this is one of the tools that I recommend for people that are getting started in pen testing, because you go through, and if you're using this, if you use PowerShell just once or something, some of the resources people shared, like Don, the command line Kung Fu, learning something like learning those tools there, and then you come in to this site, Under the Wire CTF, under the wire.tech, and you're able to put those skills to the test. So that's the same way, like Hack the Box and CTFs and vulnerable VMs. That's, getting the hands-on experience is good. And so Under the Wire, you're practicing those skills, you're getting hands-on experience with it. So that's a good place to get some PowerShell experience there.